Let's start first off with how you ended up in Milwaukee. You were a few years into your professional career by the time you ended up here.
Yep, correct. I was playing in Peoria. We actually had a 5-game series with Milwaukee. I was fortunate enough to score the winning goal to knock them out of the playoffs with a minute left to go in the game. So I think that had a hand in when they saw me playing down in Charlotte, North Carolina. So they brought me up halfway through the season, and I stuck here for part of 4 years. So.
Now, who brought you in then? Was it Phil?
Phil was here, yes. He was, yep. I think Pete likes to say that he brought me in. He told Phil to do it, so that's how I ended up here. Yeah.
So you end up here, you end up playing for a few years for Al Sims, actually.
That's correct, yeah.
How was Al Sims? We've talked so much about all the other coaches, but we don't really talk much about Al Sims. What was Al Sims like?
He was a pretty laid back guy. Off the ice he was laid back, but he expected a lot out of you on the ice. So he brought out the best in my game. I think he was a jokester too. Like to have the players loose, But if we weren't playing well, he knew to pull the leash in a little bit and get us going. So yeah, he was a good coach.
When you started playing professionally, college hockey players were becoming more prevalent, but they certainly weren't as prevalent as they are nowadays. So what was it like for you joining the professional ranks after 4 years in college?
Yeah, it was definitely you felt like you had something to prove, there was always the talk on the ice from the Canadians, they'd always call you college
So is
boy.
that why you didn't mind dropping the gloves?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I felt like I could hold my own early on in my career, and then I got that reputation, and then later on it was a little more difficult because I kept getting injured when I dropped the gloves. But it was definitely, I'm a real competitive person like all hockey players are, so when you hear that stuff, you're not going to back down, So I think I got myself over my head a few times when it came to that. So,
but it worked out okay.
It worked out, yeah.
So when you get to town, is that kind of one of the things that you said when the Admirals brought you in from Charlotte? Is that one of the things you said? All right, I'm going to make my mark, and this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I got some feedback early on in my career from what's his name, a Rangers scout who was. I was drafted by the Rangers. He was kind of my coaching me up through the ranks, and I was slumping at one time early on in my career, and this was in college, and he said, "Eric, you're 6'3", play like it," and that stuck with me. I think I had in my head that I was a finesse player. I was going to score goals, but when he said that, I completely changed my game. Good things started to happen when I. Was
that hard for you to take, though? I mean, because everybody wants to be in basketball, everybody wants to be the dunk or the three-point shot. Nobody really wants to take on it. They all see themselves more as Gretzky than McSorley, I guess.
I think I tried to mold my playing after like Cam Neely. That's how he started out. He was a fighter.
Right.
I figured, you know what, you got to prove yourself there. My confidence, I built confidence in that regard, and I actually started putting the puck in the net. And I think it was with the Admirals. I can't remember what year, but I think I had 23 goals one year, and that because they put me on the power play in front of the net and wanted me to get my nose dirty, take the eyes away from the goalie, and it worked out for me. So unfortunately, injuries caught up with me, and my career went for a tailspin. But that was kind of why I did that.
Well, that 97-98, the season you mentioned there that you scored those goals. That was the last year as an independent team here in Milwaukee before signing on with Nashville. What was it like playing with an independent? Because more and more, and obviously here in Milwaukee it happened the next season, but more and more teams were becoming affiliated throughout the IHL and obviously the AHL.
Yeah, I think it gave us more flexibility to bring in players. We had a lot of veteran players.
Was that appealing? That was very appealing for people?
Definitely for me. As a younger guy, I think. Yeah, you can. You got Tony Herkus. You can bring in Michel Mongeau. I think we brought in too. So guys that weren't sticking with NHL teams, we brought them in, and I think we had success because of it.
So you mentioned a couple of those names. What was Michel Mongeau like?
He was just the friendliest guy you'll ever meet. I met him in Peoria, played with him a couple of years there too. So sad news, his passing. But yeah, he was one of the good guys in the game.
Absolutely. You played with Tony Herkus. You mentioned his first time around here in Milwaukee.
Yep.
What kind of player was Tony Herkus at this level?
Just outstanding. I mean, he was one of those guys you're just in awe of playing with. I was fortunate enough to play with Paul Correa at Maine.
Right.
And he was the same type of guy. When Herkus,
and obviously you knew Herc from his college days too. I mean, you knew who this guy was.
Yeah, absolutely. I was always like, why isn't this guy in the NHL? You know, he was just, I learned a lot from him. Just his poise and whatnot, and his confidence, and I don't know how he wasn't always in the NHL.
Right.
Yeah.
Your goaltenders, there was kind of a revolving door for a few years with the Admirals with the #1 goaltender, but Danny Lorenz, I suppose, may have had the best success here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was probably to this day the best goalie stopping a shootout. He was the hardest guy to score on, I think, in a shootout.
What made him so?
I think his skating ability. He'd come out so far, and he could skate back with you as fast as you were coming in on him. You know, and he would wait for you to make a move. Usually, you wait for the goal, have to wait out the goalie and try to. But he was so
patient.
Oh, big time, yeah. He was so quick too. I'd put him right up there with Hobby Boulin. He was down playing with Long Beach. I think we went to like 12 shooters, I think, and I actually got a chance. He made me look foolish. But I never had to go against Danny. So
those days, though, in the IHL, I mean, that's kind of when the league really, I mean, expanded, and there were some that thought maybe owners were trying to challenge the NHL and the markets they were going. I mean, they were Houston and San Francisco and all of that. What was it like? I mean, this league was basically your northern upper Midwest league for so long, and all of a sudden it's massive.
Yeah, I was hoping that my contract was going to go up too if they did go against the NHL, but that didn't happen. But I was hoping for that.
But when all of these teams start coming in, I mean, what are you guys thinking? Is it just another opportunity, another job potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's more big time. I think, you know, going into those big cities, going into San Fran, Vegas was always a favorite trip, you know, and Orlando. Yeah, it felt more big time, I guess.
What were those trips like? I mean, it wasn't, obviously you're not hopping a bus to go to Vegas, and you probably go to Vegas, I would assume, a day or two early, so there's a chance for shenanigans.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't know how much I can tell you, but it was funny because the game or two leading up to that trip, you kind of held back a little. Not so much held back, but maybe in practice you held back. You didn't want to get hurt. You know, because the guys that got hurt didn't go on the trip. Absolutely. So once you made that trip, then you could relax a little bit. But yeah, we had some fantastic memories playing in Vegas.
Did you didn't get to play in Vegas? You weren't. You did not play for that team.
No. I don't know how.
How can somebody do that?
I do not know. But they had, I guess, for a long time, they had the best record in the league.
Right.
You know, I mean, I don't know if it's for teams coming in and maybe staying up too late the night before or whatnot, but yeah, it's definitely a fantasy land for adults, and we made the most of it.
How were you able? Because there was success. I mean, you guys, it was still a very good team, if not great team, throughout. I mean, again, it wasn't just a simple bus trip to Peoria or to Kalamazoo or anything like that. How were you able to keep the focus? Is that the coaches? Was that, like you mentioned, the veteran players?
Yeah, I think it was the veterans, the coaches. There was no real sense of pressure to win. You know, it was a professional attitude. You know, it was if we lost, had a couple. There was no panic. No, you know, they weren't hitting the panic button. We were
not too high, not too low.
Absolutely, yeah. It was like, you know what? You'll get back. You'll get it back. We've got the veterans. We got guys that know how to win. You know, and we're going to do it. I remember a story. We had a promotional night. We're going to play against the Wolves. I don't remember what year it was. Phil was still here. Place was sold out, 18,000 here. We lost 7-0, I believe. We come in the locker room after just thinking we're going to get, you know, ripped into. And Phil comes in. We'll get him next time, guys. Keeps walking right into his office. You know, I was like sitting there going. It was my first year because I was fairly new. I remember thinking, wow. But I mean, it kept your confidence up.
I was going to say, did that make you want to play for the guy?
Absolutely, that's exactly what it did. Yeah, you wanted to win for a guy like that, you know. And sometimes when coaches come in and they get on you, maybe subconsciously, you know, you're not going to give it your all. But for a guy like Phil, you wanted to go through a brick wall for him. Absolutely.
When you were here and you mentioned the injuries and all of that, you were one of the guys that you were with the independent team and you made the transition when this team became a Nashville team. What was that experience like? Was it a little testy for you maybe that Nashville was coming in, or did you have to sign with Nashville? How did this work?
No, I stayed. I signed with Milwaukee still. It was kind of ironic because I began my career with the Portland Pirates with Barry Trotz.
Right.
So he was obviously with Nashville.
So did you go to camp that year then?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And yeah, it was fairly simple transition. I felt more of a veteran by then, you know, and helping out the younger guys seemed to come my way a lot. So
you had quite a few, and quite a few guys that were from outside of North America.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
Carlos Grashton's, Kimo Timonen.
Yep.
Thomas Vokoun was here briefly. Guys like that. I mean, what was that like? Because now it's this influx of young, new talent that hadn't been here before.
Right. Yeah. No, it was a great experience. Those guys couldn't speak English a lick when they first got here, and I remember I always wanted to try to keep things light because it wasn't like I talked about with Phil. It kind of was that little bit of a change, you know. It wasn't so much the laid-back country club atmosphere anymore, you know. It's now the young kids coming in and they've got things to prove, and I think they had a lot of pressure on them. I always tried to keep things light with those guys. I know they probably thought I was a little bit out of my head, but.
But you had been through that. You had been through both.
Absolutely.
You had been through the grind, and you had been through the we'll get them next time attitude.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I mean, that's one of those experiences that everybody needs to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd been on some winning teams. I was fortunate to be in a national championship team. Then the Calder got team with Portland. So that was the mentality. You know, it's gonna be professional. You know, we're gonna find ways to win, you know, and that confidence is contagious amongst the team, and that seemed to be always the case in Milwaukee.
Those guys were young, as I mentioned. You played with Craig Darby, who had a great season here.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was he like, I guess, as a player when he was here for a brief time? He
was very talented, just a very talented player. Kind of quiet in the locker room, you know. He just did his business on the ice, you know. Another great guy, you know, no conflicts with any other teammates, you know, and just did his thing every night, consistent.
You mentioned a quiet guy. Was that how it was basically? Because you had young guys at that time, that first year with Nashville. Yeah. Was it a pretty quiet locker room, or did you have to take it upon yourself to be the?
Yeah.
I'm assuming you were the rah-rah guy.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I think I was. I would say it was probably 5 or 6 of us, you know. But other than that, yeah. Guys would be more standoffish, I think, you know, until we got to know each other. But definitely the Europeans were more quiet to start. But
you know, it's amazing though when you go to a hockey locker room, no matter where it is, it doesn't take long for everybody to get on the same page.
No.
I mean, it's whether it's a week, but it certainly isn't long for two worlds to connect.
No, not at all. No, that's one of the things I miss most about playing is the camaraderie that you build in the locker room. And if you don't have that camaraderie, you're not going to win on the ice if you don't have it in the locker room. So
when you left, and then I mean your career came to an end a few years later. What was it? The injuries that it was time for you to hang it up?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just couldn't do it anymore. It was a tough thing to swallow, but my wife was pregnant with twins, and it was just a decision it was time.
And this is why you stayed then, I'm assuming, obviously.
Absolutely,
You met her here then when you were playing?
Yep, I did, yeah. She was actually they were trying to set her up with Steve Strunk, and he asked me to come out with him because he was going out with her and a few others, and I said, what the heck? I went along, and he had a girlfriend in Detroit, so it wasn't, she was fair game.
Yeah, well, very good. That worked out great.
Yeah,
that worked out great. So since your career came to an end, was it hard to shift into full-time dad, full-time husband, full-time businessman, whatever you got into?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was, you know, it sunk in more a couple of years later, you know. At the start, you still felt like you were a part of it, kept in touch with other guys and whatnot, but then, it started to sink in. But, you know, I'm lucky to have a great family, so got to keep it positive life goes on.
We show a video at the Bradley Center. I think it's of you, is it tossing a drink through a penalty box?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Can you explain that? You know that well? Do you remember that well?
I do remember that well. That was a tough day, and I'll tell you why. Because we had practice. I think practice got over about 11:30. They wanted me on the ice by noon shooting that commercial. I had nothing to eat. All the guys were leaving, going to have lunch. I had nothing to eat. They were feeding me those deviled eggs. If you can remember, I had to grab a deviled egg and eat it once I got in the... I had probably 7 or 8 of those, and I didn't get out of here until about 4:35.
Okay.
And if you've ever had deviled eggs on an empty stomach and that's all you had, I was fighting it a little bit. But it was a pretty cool experience. I think it won some award, they told me later on, and they never even told me, never invited me out to Hollywood or anything. And had to have been the acting that won that award.
Yeah.
No, it was pretty cool.
Explain what you're up to now.
I am a Target group leader out at the Target Distribution Center out in Economo.
Okay.
Yeah, love it. I've been there for about 3 years now. It's a great job, and because they use leadership, they build leadership and whatnot, and that's right up my alley. And coaching some hockey too, coaching Team Wisconsin. For after the high school season, we play up in Minnesota in some tournaments and whatnot. So, coaching my kids also, 11 and 12-year-olds. So, staying involved.
It's
busy.
I've said this so many times in these interviews we've done. It is just amazing to me the number of guys that have come here with no ties, that have planted roots and not only stayed but have given back to the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this city. I mean, I've been to a lot of cities. This one, I don't know what it is, but something made me magnetized to it. It was kind of ironic how I ended up here too. I mean, we won when I was with Maine. We won the national championship here. You know,
right?
I kept getting dragged back, so it was inevitable that I was going to end up here.